to underwrite, to have tactical empathy and negotiation strategy and underwrite properties and all the things that are associated with closing deals and moving deals forward. So we're here today to do some training, and hopefully you can glean some wisdom. I'm with Brent Silverbauer, part of eXp Mastery Team. We're both part of eXp. We're both multifamily specialists, and we're here in California. We have teams across the country as well that we're growing our eXp organization. And we're very passionate about being excellent at our crafts and really, iron sharpens iron is the way we think about it. And so we do some role play, we do some training, and we're going to be talking about all things commercial real estate. Brent, how are we doing today? Brent Silverbauer out of Northern California. What's going on, my man?
Oh, doing great. Monday morning, ready to get after it.
Absolutely. So Brent, we've talked about a couple things these last few weeks, right? And I want to hear what you've learned so far. I think we've been doing this for about 6 sessions or so, maybe 5. So why don't you just lead the training today, and I'll be the student today, as much, student coach. Okay. But you lead the way. Okay.
Sounds great. So first off, I just love being in here. And it's great. Repetition breeds excellence. The more you do things, getting your reps up, the more smooth you are, the better you get, the more proficient, the more efficient you get with it. And so I've been loving this. And so basically we're talking about how to close deals in the multifamily world, commercial real estate world. Okay. And so the first thing, usually where it starts, is a cold call. You just call someone out of the blue. And there's a purpose of the cold call is basically you're not trying to sell anything. You're not trying to make friends. You're just trying to basically get an in-person meeting. That's the purpose of the cold call. And so that's what you want to do. Hey, look, I love to meet with you, hear your story, blah, blah, blah. Just that is the purpose. And if they talk to you about how's the market, what do you think about my property? What do you think about its worth right now? You do not say any of that stuff. You know what? You just kind of deflect to, I would love to get together. It is quite complicated. I have a lot to say about it, but I'd love to meet you, take you out to lunch and meet with you, build some rapport, hear your story, and tell you all my ideas.
Yeah, and let me actually break down the science of that, right? And so it's what's called the interest generator. And once you have an interest generator and they start asking you questions, those are all reasons to meet. And so part of your skill set is it's called, you want to convert on the reasons to meet. You want to convert your interest generator on your reasons to meet. And so one of them for Brent and I in Northern California with multifamily properties is, hey, look, there are certain loans together. There are certain loans right now that you had it fixed for a couple of years that are low interest rate, that are assumable. Many sellers are considering taking advantage of that right now, given the changing in the marketplace, and for the ability to assume a new existing loan versus getting a new loan that's double the amount. What are your thoughts on taking advantage of that? And they're going to start, thinking and, answering that. And they might even ask you a question or a follow-up question, and you say, hey, that's a great reason for us to meet, to go through that. I'm actually going to be in your area tomorrow, next week. We might even be able to do a Zoom for a specific time. Now you might say, well, Brett, isn't that really fast on that first meeting? It could be. And you might even answer a part of that question, right? They might ask you, well, how does that kind of work? What is that about? And you might even give them a little more interest on that. But you want to immediately try to convert it for a meeting. And that's going to gauge how serious they are about even doing business right now. And so again, you have a call, you have an interest generator. That interest generator, you're going to try to hopefully, get some interest. You're going to ask them kind of like an open-ended question. And then they're going to start to respond or connect with you or ask you questions. And then you're looking and watching for windows of opportunity to convert the conversation into a meeting. Brent, any thoughts on that?
No, I mean, that's exactly right. Yeah. Good interest generator is key. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You don't want to be the person who has all the time in the world to talk to somebody, right? Because you are busy. And if you're not tactically time blocking your energy and your time, your cold calling sessions should be specifically narrowed down to, I'm going to make X amount of calls in the next 2 hours. I want to make 50 calls, 100 calls. And my goal is to set 3 to 5 meetings that I'm going to go on in this next week. And you're going to have these time blocks of these times. And so you're just completely putting the blinders on and everything else, and you are calling the folks to see who has some interest, who has some seriousness. You're not there to have the meeting. You're there to set meetings, okay? And to go on those meetings at a later time. So again, purpose of the cold call is to set a meeting. You do that through interest generators, through asking like an open-ended question. And sometimes you might even take a story, Brent, right? Talk about the power of story in a recent closed deal or recent deal that you underwrote or you just toured, and how that can also be an interest generator.
Yeah, the more stories you have, it builds credibility for you, that you're in the market, that you know what's going on, that you know the players, that you know, it positions you as an expert. They're not in the market. They're not closing deals. They're not touring properties generally. They're not all these things. And information, good decisions come from good information. And if you present yourself as one who has good information, it leads naturally to them feeling like you're going to help them to make good decisions.
Excellent. So now we set the meeting and we're going on the meeting now. Lindsay, welcome. She's part of the eXp mastery team. She's a residential amazing agent in Chico, California. Lindsay, are you ready to go today? Happy Monday to you.
Happy Monday. Yes.
Excellent. So once you're on the meeting, what is the purpose of the meeting, Lindsay? The first listing appointment or the first meeting with the potential seller or buyer?
To see kind of what their problem might be and if you can have a solution for it, and to build rapport with that person as well.
Excellent. What percentage of the time are you talking versus them? What's a good ratio?
80-20.
For who? You or them?
They should be doing most of the talking.
Exactly, right? So you're asking some good open-ended questions. You're asking about their goals, their ambitions. You're trying to identify their goals and ambitions and their problems and challenges, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're meeting with you because you're the expert, and they're probably hoping that you're going to provide some clarity, right? Some creativity, and some compelling reasons to maybe take some action, right? So the only way to do that, though, is to be asking open-ended questions, hearing their story, understanding where they're at, and really identifying their problems and their desires, right? Because they're in a situation here, and also understand where they're at right now. Like, where are you right now? What are those things? And what's a good way, besides just asking questions, so you're not feeling like you're interrogating them, right? Or you don't actually really have to ask too many questions. But what would be one strategy to get them to open up a little bit more? Do you remember what that was, Lindsay?
I think one of them was kind of mirroring what they're saying and making them feel like you're hearing them and you're understanding, what their issues are, where they're at.
That's fantastic. And so that's exactly right. And Brent, what is the definition of mirroring?
Yeah, definition of mirroring is repeating the last thing that they said with a playfully curious tone that generally goes up, like, what's the definition?
Yeah, and it's kind of funny to think about, right? And it sounds kind of odd, and you're like, why? I feel funny doing this. That's a good thing. You're stretching yourself, and you're actually learning and practicing how to be an active listener and be a curious listener. And that's why it might feel a little bit unnatural, but Lindsay might say, rents have been going down. And instead of just taking that as face value of, oh, rents are going down, you might say, rents are going down? Kind of that curious, upward inflecting question mark, right? Because guess what, Lindsay, I might not know what you mean by that, right? And I actually don't know what you mean by that until you get a chance to open up and tell me more about that. And that's when you're going to mirror, and you can do multiple mirrors, by the way. So it could be something like, Lindsay, rents are going up. What would you say to that? Or rents are going down, Lindsay?
Yeah, that's what some of my friends have told me that own investment properties.
Some of your friends that own investment properties?
Yep, a couple of them that have college rentals in Chico.
Oh, neat. It sounds like you're pretty well connected with some others that own some investment properties in Chico.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. That's great. And I think that's good to have those people you can call on and have a chance to really dig into the numbers. We are seeing some of the rents going down. In fact, I just did a recent survey, and for a client of mine, we're seeing that exact same trend. Depending where you're at, things are definitely softening. And I don't know if they're going down, more so they're just flattening out. They're not kind of going up. So here's some of the data here. And now, say I might move this into a label. And so, Brent, do you remember what a label is?
Yeah, labeling is when you say it seems like, it feels like, it sounds like, and then you just, label what they're saying. And if you get it right, they'll say that's right, or they'll say like Lindsay did, yes. If you
What
get it
specifically
wrong,
are you labeling? Like what are you
yeah,
labeling? Not just what they said, but what specifically are you labeling?
you're summarizing what they said. It sounds like, you have friends who have college rentals and they're not doing so good.
Yep, that is a good summary. But let me ask Lindsay, see if she knows what am I labeling here? Like if I say, Lindsay, if I say something like this, oh, it's really concerning that the rents are going down. I have a vacancy now. It's taking more than 45 days to fill right now. I usually get calls, like 20 calls over the weekend. I just put it on Craigslist. I'm putting advertisements now on these different things, and I'm very concerned. What would be a good label for that, Lindsay?
I think you're kind of labeling their emotion. So maybe it sounds like you're nervous or afraid that you're not going to be able to rent out your property and have it cash flow for you.
You nail it. So another way to think about labeling is just emotional label, right? And your goal is to help them understand that you also feel what they're feeling about that particular thing, right? So yes, it sounds like you're a bit concerned that rents are lowering and you have a vacancy. Am I way off? Right? And then you just be quiet. And then you say, no, you're not way off. And then you could follow up with, if it feels like, maybe perhaps some of, you could even tie it back to their other friends. It feels like maybe your friends may be going through this too, or it depends if they said that or not, right? You could also follow up with one Brent says, is that concerning you given where you want to be or what you're trying to do? There's a couple of ways to transition that. You can transition to the future state. You can transition to the next state. Well, what happens if 2 units go vacant? We are seeing some trends where, student housing, for example, in Chico, California, now you're going to bring in some data, and Brent does an amazing job of getting data to back this, right? And that perhaps was your interest generator to meet in the first place. But you're basically trying to put a puzzle piece together to see how the challenges in the marketplace and the opportunities in the marketplace can fit with their challenges, with their particular asset and where they're trying to go. So Brent, what would be another good question to open them up to see where else they're trying to go?
Just an open-ended question is where would you like to see yourself in the future in 5 years? I mean, something like that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Where would you like to see yourself? Where do you envision you being when you first got started and compared to where you're at now on a scale of 1 to 10? How are you doing? And they might say a 5. And you say, tell me more about the 5. So Brent, tell me more about that 5. What do you mean by 5?
Oh, well, at first it was gangbusters. Rents were going up. The deals were great. The interest rates were low. Now the rents are low. I feel stuck, blah, blah, blah. I feel like I can't sell it. I feel like I don't know where to exchange into. I feel like it's easy. It's harder to sell now. And,
So it sounds like, it feels like, it seems like, right? And I'm going to try to summarize, add those emotions, but also now try to connect the future, right? Sounds like you wanted to get into this to get passive income. It feels like perhaps you maybe maximize some of the value and things were going well for a while. And it seems like you might want to have an advantageous 1031 exchange property or a way to defer taxes on the exit if it was lined up. Am I way off, Brent?
No, you're right.
Okay. I want to add another little nuance here too. Okay. So I'm learning a new thing now with success coaching, which I'm a part of. I'm doing the certification right now. We'll see if I pass, which is pretty cool. But they talked about people thinking and connecting in their mind in a couple different ways. One of them is visual. Like, I like the way that looks. Another one is tactical. I like the way that feels, like something you can grip. Mm-hmm. Another one's auditory, like there's certain sounds that help them to connect things. And so if we can talk, it's almost like a different dialect for the same language that we're speaking in English right now. And if you can connect those things, it helps the people to not only know that you're understanding them, but also helps them to connect action. Okay. So more to come on that, but it's just, I want to plant that seed. That's going to be some cool training we're going to go through, which is blowing my mind, by the way. I'm like, oh my gosh, I never even thought about this kind of thing. So the purpose of the meeting is to discover build a ton of rapport. They're speaking 80% of the time. And then we're going to discover and pull out more information and more understanding by mirroring and labeling. But we're not going to present the proposal, right? Why, Brent? Why don't we just present all of the stuff right now and just give them all the answers to all of their things?
That's a good question. I think because you want a commitment before a proposal is a ton of time, energy. You want possibility, or you want probability brokerage, not possibility brokerage. So you want to ask this question. Hey, you know what? I have a lot of good information. If I could, if we could agree on price and terms, and I could show you this marketing that suits your desires, then would you exclusively allow me to list the property?
Yeah, Lindsay, if you show up to a doctor, it's exactly right, Brent. If you show up to a doctor, Lindsay, and you tore your ACL in your knee, and they're like, oh, let's just put you on the operating table and just fix it right now without doing an MRI or an X-ray or blood test, all of the things to prepare for a serious surgery, how would you feel?
No, not great.
Not
I
great,
feel like
right?
through that meeting, you're also like finding out more information maybe that you didn't originally have. So you might miss something big by trying to present it all in that first time when you're kind of in the discovery phase.
What might you miss that's big? I'm just curious. What comes to mind there if you're not doing the proper preparation and the due diligence on their property and on the underwriting and on the marketplace and on the sales comps? What could you miss?
Everything. You could miss their real desire for wanting to sell. You could miss how they like to communicate, making it a smoother transaction, so many things. You could miss building the trust with them.
100%, right? So it's that rapport, it's that trust, and it's the uncovering of, if my mindset is I'm here to just close the deal, or I'm here just to get the listing on this first appointment, it's probably not going to be a good feeling or outcome, or if it's going to feel rushed, right? It's going to feel rushed, like we're trying to get married too soon, right? We're trying to move the relationship fast too soon. But if you come up from an approach of being open-minded and really putting their best interest forward and just discovering and feeling and understanding where they're coming from, what their goals and desires are, and taking that all in, and then saying something along the lines of a conditional, agreement, right? And Lindsay, what would that go? How would you phrase that? If you've uncovered needs, goals, and desires, right? There's definitely some motivation to sell. What would be that transitional question to move us to the next meeting?
Well, kind of like Brent said, if we can agree on price and terms to your satisfaction, is there any reason why I can't come back and make a proposal to you and list your property?
Amazing. Fantastic. Brent, would you say that for us again? How would you say it?
Yeah. Well, I think there's a key thing. So you say, basically, if we can agree on price and terms to your satisfaction, did you say to your satisfaction?
Yeah, that's a great one. That's a great one to say. Yep.
Yeah, to your satisfaction, is there any reason why you wouldn't use me to exclusively represent and list the property?
Absolutely. And let me do another way to say it too. And there's no it's an art and a science, right? Assuming we can agree on price and terms, and to your satisfaction, I can address your concern about 1031 exchange, your concern about sales comps, your concern you expressed about rent comps and why it's a great reason to sell right now. And we can help you achieve your passive income goals. We can help you achieve maybe increasing your cash flow and not feeling trapped by the 1031 exchange. See, I've listed, and now they're going, oh my goodness, yes, exactly. Right? Don't assume that they know that you heard, even though you mirrored and labeled before. Bring it all together in a nice package here for them. And assuming we can agree on price and terms, is there any other reason that you wouldn't allow me to exclusively list your property for you? And by the way, I'm going to put together a full proposal. Let me back up in 20 seconds. I'm going to put a full proposal that's going to lay all of this out in detail with sales comps, rent comps, underwriting, and a clear picture on how we're going to achieve this outcome for you. And assuming we can agree on price and terms. In other words, I'm going to do the MRI, I'm going to do the blood test, I'm going to do the X-ray. I'm going to have a specialist look at the results, and assuming that comes back that it looks like, yeah, you do need ACL surgery. Your ACL is blown, and we need to put you back together here. Is there any reason why you wouldn't go forward with surgery? Is there any reason why you wouldn't allow me to exclusively list the property and sell it for you? And then you just be quiet. And they might say something, Brent. What would they might say?
Well, hopefully they say, no, I'd love for you to list the property. But what you're going to find out is a lot of times they'll say, well, my brother is an agent and I've been talking to him. Well, my wife is a broker. She doesn't do it anymore, but she still has her broker's license. And, all the other little things that come out that are the little snares that are going to catch you on day 20 when you don't realize it.
And our first reaction is like, oh, but instead it should be mirror.
Thank God I found out.
Mirror and label, right? Mirror and label. Now, this is a great opportunity to mirror and label, because I don't know what you mean by that your nephew is newly licensed and so your nephew is newly licensed?
Yeah. He just got his license. He's 19 years old. He mainly does residential, but what's the difference?
What's the difference?
Yeah, it's like the same thing, right? I mean, it's all real estate. It's just, what's the price,
It sounds like your nephew is new to the business, and you're curious what's the difference between residential and commercial. Am I way off?
Well, yeah. I mean, if he could sell a house, he could sell a multifamily, right?
It sounds like if someone can sell a house, you can sell a multifamily. Is that what you're saying? Am I way off?
No, yeah. I mean, what's the difference? That's no big deal.
It's a great question.
Take the photos, put them on the internet. I mean,
yeah, it's a really good question. I can really appreciate that. The ability to work with family and to be able to keep it in house and maybe even get a lower fee. I'm not sure exactly what the advantage would be to you, except for those things. But assuming we could agree on pricing terms, and I come back to your satisfaction and show you how we could work with your nephew, right? And also to your satisfaction, the other things we talked about. Is there any other reason you wouldn't allow me to exclusively list the property?
Well, now that you addressed that, no, not off the top of my head. Not that I could think of right now. No.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Yeah.
So next week I'm going to come back. Wednesday work for you? Great. So now we're going to close the meeting, although build some more rapport before you get out of there, right? And don't rush the exit of that unless their personality type is a driver and they're just being really efficient. And away you go for the proposal. And then when you show back up, right, you're going to open up with some conclusions, right, about the property, the value. And also before you start, though, you're going to say, hey, there's a few things we're going to be covering during this proposal, but I want to make sure that we're covering exactly what you want to cover. So are there any things you want me to address? And they may or may not even bring up that nephew anymore. They may have just been testing you on negotiation. There could be a number of things, but don't think you have to present the entire proposal all at once into this long, drawn out thing. It's now the proposal sitting here. The key of the proposal is you've done your time, energy, tours, underwriting, talked with the lenders, right? Looked at the rents, looked at the sales comps, understanding what's going on in the marketplace. And you are the expert. And that's part of doing the proposals because you've done your homework. And at that point, you're presenting and you're going through the plan with the goal to close, should it help them meet their goals? And essentially, as you're walking through, do you see how this can help you reach your goal here? Do you see how the valuation is here? Am I way off in showing you that the rents are actually in trouble and things actually are going down and now is a good time to sell? Do you see how using, this assumable loan as an opportunity to get a new buyer in place is going to help us get a higher price? And you're just checking off all of the marks to help them understand that this is going to be in their best interest to sell. Like, we don't want to sell someone into a listing. We want to be a consultant and a coach to show them why it can help them solve their problems and meet their desires. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
All right. What questions does anyone have right now?
Yeah, I have a guy actually where he wants to sell his RV park, but it's just too much for the buyer. Like, he wants $6 million, and of course, this buyer doesn't want to pay that. So I don't have a listing agreement or anything. I'm pretty new at this, so I guess that would be my best bet, is just to get him to sign a listing agreement. I don't know if he'll do that though.
I'm going to pass this to Brent because I've got to jump on my next meeting. It's a great question, Vicente. And so I'm going to let Brent, Lindsay, and Vicente continue on. I will be back next week. I'm finishing success coaching trading. So I will see you guys next week. Bye now.
See you, Brent. Yeah, Vicente, you absolutely need to have a listing agreement 100%, or else you're going to go out of business pretty quick, because what happens is you spin your wheels. And so you have to go back to, you know, if I can bring the buyer that satisfies your need for price and terms and whatever else they need, is there any reason you wouldn't exclusively allow me to list the property? Right. And they may say, well, I don't want to list it on the MLS. I don't want to do that. Okay. So what I'm hearing you say is you want to get this high price, but you don't want to list it on the MLS. Tell me more about that. I mean, generally speaking, if they have that, I mean, what is their stance? Why won't they exclusively allow you to list that property if they're going to sell it?
Well, I've actually never even asked that question. I'm such an amateur. I brought a potential buyer and we had a video group call like this, and they actually, neither one of them never mentioned any numbers. They just, you know, the guy said his motivation to sell. He said he doesn't have to sell, but he would like to.
So you don't even know what commission, you never talked about commissions or anything like that? Yeah.
No.
You don't even know.
Maybe he's not really super motivated. It's just kind of like if he can get the price he wants, it's like, you know.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That is so dangerous. I've made that mistake many times, Vicente, where it's just bring me a buyer. If you don't have anything in writing, you're going to get cut out, period. And then you're going to expect like 2%. And you're like, oh, it's $120,000. They're going to look at that at some point in time, and be like, wait, why am I paying you $120,000? I already know the buyer. We already know, we already agreed. Why do we need you? And you're going to be like,
left out.
You know, you're going to have nothing to stand on. And that's why when you look at this process with the cold call, that's why you say, if, before you do any work, before you bring a buyer, before you set up an agreement, before you do any of that stuff, you say, if we can agree on price and terms, if I could bring a buyer, if you're satisfied, is there any reason why you wouldn't? It's a business. And what you've inadvertently done, and this is what we talk about a lot here on the show, you got into the friend zone. Like you're just like their friendly neighbor who's bringing them a buyer, you know, and it's hard.
That's like a verbal contract. What you just said, if we can agree on terms and price, will you let me represent you? Let me list it. Once he says yes, or if he does, that's a verbal agreement, but it needs to go further. I need to say, okay.
It needs to be, it needs to be on that second step. Cold call when you first meet them. Let me meet you in person. Then that's when you ask that. And before you go and bring that buyer, I got buyers. You can make all the promises you want. I could do this. Now, assuming I do all this stuff, is there any reason why you wouldn't exclusively, and you have to say exclusively, not non-exclusively, because again, they can cut you out. Exclusively use me to list the property. And then, and I'll be honest, every single seller in the world will say, bring me a buyer. If you give me $10 million for this, yeah, I'd sell it. Bring me a buyer. Then they'll cut you out if you don't have an agreement. So you got to list the property on the MLS. And that is the way they're going to get the highest and best. Say, hey, look I have 100 investors. I've done deals. I got people. I have networks. I have connections. But I don't know everybody in the world. And the best way to get the best price for you is to expose it and then go into your marketing. I'm going to put it on LoopNet and then talk about the stats. It gets 100,000 views a day. I'm going to put it on Facebook. I'm going to put it on Crexy. I'm going to put it in this group of commercial real estate investors. I'm going to connect with 100 of the top mobile home park agents in the country. And then, but to do that, and I could guarantee you will get the highest price. So much better than me just bringing Joe Schmo from down the street. I can bring Joe Schmo, but there's no guarantee you're going to get the highest price. And then you got to hear what he says. And then you got to practice probability brokerage, not possibility brokerage. My first listing was $8.8 million. And the guy said, bring me a buyer. And I had a non-exclusive agreement with him. But he says, you can't put on the MLS. This is an hour away. I trucked 3 separate parties, an hour away, an hour back, take them out to lunch, show them the property. All 3 of them passed. You know, it's hard to get people to buy $8.8 million property. And then I spent like months, and it was my only deal. And I was so like, if I close this, it's $180,000. And I was so excited, but I couldn't close it. And what I did was I wasted 2 months of my life.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, that's the risk you take. But you don't want to take that risk. You only want to work with people who want to work with you.
Mhm.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's a process to this. Yeah.
Everyone gets excited, but you got to have that thing up front. And, you know, I'll tell you another story. I had these people in a 1031 exchange, ag people. I sat down with them. I showed them all these deals. I did all this stuff. I did, it's cold call to the in-person meeting. And then at that in-person meeting, is there any reason you wouldn't exclusively use me to represent you to buy property? And she said, no. And I sent them an exclusive buyer's agent agreement, you know, and now I showed them all this stuff. I did all these things. And now guess what? She called me today. I want out of my exclusive buyer's agreement. I want to go do some off market deal. I want to go do this and this. I don't want to use you anymore. But guess what?
Wow.
We have an agreement. I'm in the driver's seat now, and I don't want to be a jerk, but I spent a whole weekend showing them properties. You know, I spent a 2-hour meeting with them analyzing. I gave them access to a tool that I've spent thousands of dollars developing. And that's worth something. And so now I'm in a place where I can negotiate. I'm like, okay, well, pay me 1 or 2% to go away, and I'll go away. But I need to be compensated at this point. And I'm not your friend. I'm friends with my clients, but at the underlying, this is a business, and we have a professional contract agreement that we both agreed to. So my conversation is going to be completely different. I have a little bit, and I don't want to be a jerk. I may just say, hey, go away. But that's a decision I could make, because I asked that question early on. Now, if I didn't have that, I would show them 10 deals. They go behind my back, cut me out, and do that deal. And I would have wasted, and that's happened to me before. But the more that happens to you, and you with investment real estate, you could spend dozens of hours on one deal.
Yeah,
and so
wow.
you have to protect yourself and your family and your income, because people are people.
Right, take advantage if they can. Yep.
I mean, you're not taking advantage. That's just the business that we're in. And you got to if you're going to put in hours and work, the way it works is we don't get paid till the end, but we have to have
Right.
agreements that if I do all this work, if I show you, if I do this, will you exclusively use me, and put it in writing?
Right
And
to the point, very direct.
If they say no, you don't work with them. And if they say yes, then you have an agreement. And if they want to change it, well, then we got to renegotiate.
Hey, Brent,
Yeah.
do you always use the buyer agreements now?
No, and it's because I've been coming here that I did that for this one. I did this exact process just because I've been going through this so many times. It just came out of my mouth. And I had never done that before. And the last one, I did the same exact triplex a year ago to the day almost, and had a guy in a 1031 exchange, same situation, out of Hawaii, coming over here, had to place $1.1 million. This one's $850,000. And I got it in, I did the inspections, I did the tours, I did all this other stuff, spent hours with this man. And then he said, I don't want you to be a dual agent. I'm going to bring my other agent in. I didn't have an exclusive buyer's agent agreement. Then all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, he brings in another guy, top agent and residential agent in Butte County. Then the price goes up because you got to pay this guy's fees. I was like, man, you're shooting yourself in the foot. Then the other agent convinces him to go and buy 3 houses on your street, Lindsay, and cut me all the way out of the deal. Cut me all the way out. This guy goes and buys 3 houses, I think at 2.5%, 3%, gets paid way more. And I get left out in the cold after literally 2 months of working on this guy, which was a conversation I had 2 years prior. So it was passively 2 years, 2 months, super working hard, and then nothing. And luckily I was super busy at that time. I had a lot of different commissions, but as the market changes, it gets harder. You got to have these agreements up front. It's a cautionary tale. So yeah, I think they're going to be more important, especially in investment real estate, because no one has to buy investment real estate. you know, so you got to have an agreement in place. I mean, if you're residential, I don't know. I'd probably do it with residential too.
Yeah, I guess it depends on the client. If they're like a longtime best friend thing, or if it's just like somebody met that you're kind of unsure about.
Yeah, the more you meet people off the internet and stuff like that, the more your business grows. You get referrals. Like these people, I never met them at Adam, and they're in a different town, and you know and there's so many red flags with these people. But it's like, man, you know what? I've wasted a whole weekend away from my kids, you know, and that's valuable. And I'm not just going to be like, oh, okay, I'll just sign it away. No way.
So at a certain point though, like, where would you say it's not worth it anymore just because they don't want to work with you? And so then it, you know, versus like telling them, well, hey, we have this agreement, you have to.
Right.
But where does it become like, well, then we don't want to work with each other anymore, you know, because they kind of soured that.
Yeah. So I think a lot of it, my strategy is mirroring back labeling. It just goes back to this is all negotiation. It sounds like you wanted to exclusively work with me. I showed you all these properties, and now the property that I showed you, you don't want to work with me on. Is that right? It feels like you're kind of trying to cut me out of a deal when I worked really hard. You know, and like it sounds like you're going back, and then like listen and let them talk and mirror. Oh, you changed your mind after you signed? Talk it out. Just get them to just. I don't think you have to. You know, I don't know how it's going to go, but I'm just going to mirror back, label. You know, but we got to come to an agreement, and it's not going to be that I just walk away. You know, that's not right.
Yeah.
You know, when you agree on something. So she's getting her attorney involved, actually. So I'm going to talk to eXp brokerage. We have the best brokers. So I'm going to talk to the eXp brokers. And I mean, at the end of the day, I got a contract, you know.
Well, and she signed it. So
yeah, we all signed it.
Well, and it's like, well, why would they change their mind all of a sudden? Like, why couldn't you just show them other things, or like, you know, it doesn't work on the first deal.
They met with the principals. They met with the sellers. And then I think they had a conversation without me there, you know, and that's another thing. You want to keep your buyers and sellers away from each other, because then they're like, oh, well, I could do it for this, but yeah, Brent, we got to pay Brent, you know. Well, what if Brent's out of the picture? Well, then I'll do it for this, you know. Then we use Susie Jane for 0.5%. Oh, that would save us. That would make it work. With Brent, the deal doesn't work because he's got all these commissions. With Susie Jane for $2,000 to do the paperwork, it really works. You know, something like that may have happened. And contracts are written for conflicts. And that's why you got to get the contracts up front, because everyone's really nice up front. It's just when you get into the escrow, you get into the deals, you got to have, you know, a commitment professionally, because you are a professional. And that's why this whole process is so important, because it protects you from wasting your time. We don't get paid by the hour. We get paid when the deal closes. And if we put in 100 hours, especially with the mobile home park for $6 million, you're going to spend 100 hours on that, or maybe more. So
yeah,
you got to.
I thought that people could back out of the contract at any time. I thought if either party, I thought there was a writing in there that said, you know,
60 days.
You
had
60
days.
Okay.
Yeah, and if they're in a 45 days to identify, well, you know what? They're gonna get hit with taxes. So in this situation, yeah, there is a 60-day, and I wrote it for 180 days total. So I mean, I wrote that in there, but it's all that stuff is to protect me. So
yeah,
you got to protect yourself. Like you got to protect. It's a commercial real estate is the Wild West sometimes, and you got a bunch of Type A people in commercial who don't care, you know, who don't care about you, and can use you. Some people are wonderful, and some people are tyrants, and you got to be able to deal with both of them in a fair and professional way.
Yeah, I've had people text me, random people, oh, send me the information if you have anything for sale. So here's my email.
Everybody says that. I love that. I love that. Yeah.
People are
no,
it's courageous.
It's hilarious. You know, you get these people, you go through all this, analyze 20 deals with them. None of these work. And then they always say, well, when that killer deal comes with a 10% cap rate, call me first. And I have no professional agreement in place with you. Okay. It's like, no. I'm going to go to the person who has an agreement with me. I'm going to go to the person who's, motivated. That's going to be my first call. And everyone who's just trying to have me in the friend zone, don't allow yourself to be in the friend zone. And don't work with people unless they're not in the friend zone. And you should communicate up front. I'm going to spend a ton of time and energy and knowledge and skill. And I don't get paid till the deal closes. So I need some assurance that I'm going to be able to get paid. I mean, I'm a professional. This is what I do. And the more you do it, the smoother you get at it. Like Brett is so smooth. He's the smoothest operator. And the reason is because he does the repetition. But because I've been doing this, like you should have heard me in that meeting. Is there any reason why you wouldn't exclusively use me to represent the buyer? Represent you as a buyer. She's just like, no, great. Send you the contract. Bam, sign that night.
Nice. Wow.
That's really helpful. I've never had that conversation with my clients. I hope I don't ever have to, but it's just a good thing to keep in mind, because it's like, oh, you just kind of think people are, have a good intentions and good this and good that. And then all of a sudden it's like, then it just changes so fast and you don't have anything. It's like, well, there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah. And it's your own fault for putting yourself in a weak position. But yeah, I think in residential, it might not be as much like if you're working with your sister, your brother, your friend, like your immediate network. But if you're working with a lead off the internet, and if you're working with a commercial, if someone's in a 1031 exchange, go through the process, talk to them on the phone, get them in person. We'll look at all these properties. I'll do all this stuff before we do that. Is there any reason why you want it? Get it out. Is there any reason why you want it? So I can be assured of my pay before I do this. And if you're providing them value, they're going to sign it. And then once they sign it, you have a professional agreement. And you put it for over 60 days, and then you put it for 180-day termination, because that's how long the 1031 is.
Yeah.
So that, they're going to work, you're their agent at that point.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
See the stories. Stories are so valuable. They're so important. They tell so much. Okay. All right. Well, we're over time. Any other questions or anything like that?
Nope.
All right. Have a good one, guys. See you later.
All right. Bye, guys.